Good morning, everyone. Welcome back into open session. I'd like to begin with commissioners' reports and comments. Vice President Baker, would you begin?
Just at our Community Action Council meeting this past week, they're interested in putting on a drive for hygiene items to promote healthy lifestyles within our community, and they're looking for locations to put their collection boxes, and I didn't know if the county would be interested in participating. I have a website on the paper here that we can contact, and they're just going to be looking for, obviously clean toothbrushes, toothpaste, deodorant, things like that there, and then they'll collect it. The collection dates will be from August the 12th through September 16th, and then they'll collect it, or we'll get the items down to the Community Action Council, and they'll be distributed as needed. So I didn't know if the commissioners would be interested in setting up some collection sites throughout a couple of our county buildings or not. So, okay, and so I'll just get you this information and you can take it from there. Thank you.
We have a consensus. That's okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Terry.
Thank you.
Commissioner Baker, anything else?
Oh, that's it.
All right, Commissioner Kiefer, would you proceed?
Sure, just a few things. First of all, I'd like to congratulate everyone who was involved in the Washington County Ag Fair. I think it was a really good success. I was out there a couple of days helping out in different aspects and saw a lot of people. And I think they've reconfigured how people enter rather than paying, then parking. You park and then you pay to clear up some traffic, and I think that proved to be successful. Also, I have a question for Rob here. I was notified by someone that the county may have ended the idea that we had agreed to of going forward with a $75 rebate for septic tank haulers. I was told this morning by a citizen about that, and that they had heard we were doing away with it, and I was a little disappointed to hear that. I know we had worked out an agreement with Valcor, who took over for Spirit Services, and that was a way that we were going to try and bring in more credits, I guess, through the Maryland Department of Environment for our role in cleaning up the Chesapeake Bay by encouraging more septic tank users. And I'm just wondering if you had any insight into that.
From what I understand, the Valcor negotiation to allow for that credit did not come to fruition, and that's where it stalled, was from the Valcor side. I can certainly get more detailed information.
Yeah, if we could. I mean, this certainly would help our septic tank owners throughout the county, and I know a nice chunk of the tax increase went to shoring up the public sewer debt or sewer obligations that we have in the county, and that's certainly a benefit just to a limited number of folks. But this is a way that, some folks who have that septic tank, which is quite costly in its own right, could receive a little bit of reprieve. So maybe if we can even revisit those negotiations, I'd like to see. That was kind of the foundation of one of our agreements that I thought was important that we not escape on.
Sure, certainly.
All right.
That's all.
Thank you, Wayne. Commissioner Schmidt.
I'm good for today.
No reports about Ocean City?
Had a great vacation.
Kids were great, huh? All right. Commissioner Wagner?
I really don't have a whole lot. I also made it down to the Ag Expo a couple nights. Went down to market night and bought me some rabbits. So I'm not sure what I was going to do with those rabbits. But so I had a good friend named Jason Hose who's deep into that. He took care of those rabbits for me, and I don't think they ate them actually. I had a problem with that, but I think they gave them redonated them or did something with. I almost bought a turkey, but it was like $400 for a turkey. Can you imagine that? So anyway, that was fun actually. Go down there. Last year I bought a pig, but no, I didn't. Yeah, I bought a pig last year, I think. Yeah, so didn't eat that either. But anyway, I've been. That was a nice event. It was a nice event. It was hot, and that was the worst part about it. But the parking, like Wayne said, it was, man, they cured that by no lines on the highway that I saw. Everybody was inside before they stopped you. But I'm starting to make my rounds throughout the county, visit with all personnel. I haven't done that yet. It's just between that and the fire companies, which I wanted to get to a lot of them. I'm starting to get a couple of them. I just want to see how everybody's feeling and what's going on throughout the county. So you'll probably see me pop in. Shame is, I wish I knew 800 people, but I don't. But I'm going to meet them. So that's about all. That's about all I have today.
One day your commissioner reports will be a collage of YouTube videos. I can only imagine. Since the break, we've had several storms, and I do want to acknowledge some of our personnel and our departments. During one of the storms, Highway Department was out in the middle of the night clearing trees off of several roads. They often don't get that type of recognition, but 3 in the morning, they get a call, and they're right there taking branches and large trees off the road, so in the middle of the night, you don't run into them. So they create a very valuable part of our county government. And then we had a water sewer breakdown at Sharpsburg, and they discovered there was a second break, and the guys worked through the night through a major rainstorm into 3:30 in the morning, came back the next day and fixed both leaks. But I also want to say that Dan DeVito and his crew were working with the Antietam Bed and Breakfast Lodge, working hand in hand so they could keep their visitors coming in for the week. So that was a very good point for me to observe and see how well they were working, not just to discover one leak, they discover a second leak, and how they were working with the community on how to accommodate them so they didn't lose one bit of business. And then the next day, you had a sewer break out at Westfield. And there they were again, the same guys, the same staff was out there working 24, 36 hours on Sharpsburg. We're there at Westfield fixing a sewer leak. So both departments get our congratulations on a job well done that they often don't get the recognition for. So I thank them for that. Another event I attended was the 66th commemoration of the truce with, or I guess you could say armistice with North Korea and South Korea at the monument on Potomac Street. It was well attended, and to this day, the South Korean government is very grateful, noteworthy of they're thankful that American soldiers stood by them in their homeland to defend freedom. One of the other things I want to touch on, I think Rob's going to mention it more in depth, but I do want to say just because we lost out on I-81 funding again doesn't mean we roll over and say, okay, we're done. I think Rob's going to save the comments for Rob for more discussion on that. And one of the other things I've been working on, I briefed Rob some, and it's in the early stages. I've had certain members from the community and different veterans groups wants the commissioners to begin a Veterans Commission Advisory Board under county government. So gentlemen, as I get more information, it's real preliminary. The groups haven't even really assembled. But as that group meets, I'll keep you updated. And when we have more info, ask you all to approve that type of commission to be formed. But it's still real early. But there's approximately 11,000 veterans in Washington County. And they earned every benefit they could get. And as a board, if we could tie interested groups, just like diversity group, the health department group, to help provide a one-stop service area for our veterans, I think it would be well received and well noted that we went and made that effort. I'm being told there's only 3 counties in Maryland that doesn't have such a board. So as I get more information, I'll update you. That concludes my report. I turn it over to County Administrator Rob Slocum.
So first, Commissioner Klein, thank you, President Klein, we have a couple articles in the paper recently this week about the Interstate 81, and I know that the Greater Hagerstown Commission, the Chamber of Commerce, major manufacturers, every commuter has been interested in the widening of Interstate 81, which began at the West Virginia end. And we found that despite the commissioner's $1 million participation offer in widening that, which the county, quite frankly, has no obligation to fund the interstate of the widening of an interstate, they did make that commitment. And what I'm going to ask is that some comments were made at the Volvo visit with the Secretary of Commerce, that we could reinvestigate both the widening but also crash clearances and so forth, and try to spearhead some type of initiative by which crash clearance at our public safety training building becomes a regional model for trying to keep interstates open to traffic, tourism, and the economy that our local region needs so desperately. So with the Commissioner's approval, I'll be reaching out to various officials, including yourselves, trying to work on an opportunity to both renew this next application for Infogrant, if that does become available, but also have something involved in the Public Safety Training Center by which we may even consider taking a portion of those funds I mentioned and dedicating that to the training center, which those people are the ones out on the interstate that can help serve to get the interstate open quicker. Even though it's 2 lanes, when it's shut down to no lanes, it's much worse. So that's an initiative I'll be taking up with your blessing. And a couple other comments that I could go into, I can defer after other staff goes. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Reports from county staff, front row, please come forward.
Good morning. I'm Deborah Kondo, Deputy Director of Human Resources. Commissioners, I would like to request that the position of Human Resources Director be upgraded to a grade 19 from a grade 18 due to the requirements and responsibilities of the position. The starting annual rate of a grade 19 step 1 is $81,120. Currently, the Human Resources Director position is a grade 18 and has a starting annual rate of $75,088, which is a grade 18 step 1. This would be an increase to the starting annual rate of $6,032. With your approval, I will re-advertise the position with a new pay grade, both on various online professional job posting boards and in the Herald Mail.
Commissioners, comments?
Commissioners, if I could add some background to this, the request for this position advertisement began in May of this year, and we have received 48 resumes from Indeed. Of that, after some great deal of additional effort, we received 7 applications. 4 applications I contacted directly. Some are making close to twice the salary that has been stated as the current starting salary of approximately $75,000. So I would like to offer that the grade 19 may be the appropriate means to get the certified professional director of HR necessary for the position.
You know, I thought I've been sort of watching that, and I agree. You know, the city of Hagerstown, I think their HR director makes how much? 114, 115,
I believe
120?
we were told 116.
Yeah, 116. We're advertising at 75, and you know, and we had a lot of resumes, and it goes. I think to get a good quality, to me that's one of the most important, one of the top jobs here with 800 plus employees and all the dealings. And I would be fine with that myself.
Any commissioners, any other thoughts or a motion to accept her recommendation?
I agree, and I'd make a motion.
I'll
There's
second
a
it.
first, there's a second. Any other comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other county staff wishing to present? Please come forward. Okay. Mr. Downey has one.
Commissioners, as you know, the Court of Appeals decided the perennial solar case where they determined that the counties, local governments, municipalities do not have zoning authority over solar projects that require issuance by the Public Service Commission of a certificate of public convenience and necessity. The Public Service Commission does have to take into consideration the county's comprehensive plan as well as zoning regulations regarding these things. So staff has begun meeting to discuss what this means and how that will look moving forward. Wanted to let you know that that discussion is happening. It's going to involve the Planning Commission, and eventually there'll be some recommendations back here to the commissioners as to what the impact of that decision means. There's also going to be some discussions regarding pilots, the way they are considered for solar issues, and whether there can be some standardization brought to that process. So just wanted to let you know that those discussions are happening and are ongoing. Also wanted to let you know.
You mentioned pilots. So are you saying that the Public Service Commission is going to be telling us how we're supposed to handle pilots?
No, that's completely separate. No, there have just been some discussion and comments amongst commissioners regarding whether there would be a more standardized approach that could be taken when we review and evaluate these things. So I'm going to have some discussions with Sarah and her staff regarding what kind of process we can put together for that moving forward.
I'm glad you said that. I like the idea of us putting in writing what our concerns are for the public safety, the PSC taking in consideration what our ordinances will be of where we want them to be located, because then it's in writing that we don't want them to be in usable farmland right next to neighborhoods and things like that. So I think it's important for us to put out. Thank you.
Also wanted to let you know that yesterday got a signed promissory note from GKG in the amount of $261,465.75, agreeing to pay what was termed gap funding. The note has been executed. There is also a guarantee made by GKG's parent company standing behind that note, and accompanying it is an agreement for substitution of contract that replaces the gap funding agreement with this agreement and the promissory note. The promissory note and other documents have been executed appropriately, and at this time it's appropriate for the county commissioners to move to approve the agreement for substitution contract and move forward with recovery of the forward funding amount in this manner.
Commissioners, questions? Staff, questions?
Just a question, just to clarify. With us entering into this, we're still in agreement that we are going to respond to the bonding agency, their letter. Just want to make sure that that's part of the motion.
Would that be included in that motion? That would be a separate item, wouldn't it, Kirk? I mean, you're asking for one thing. I think it was it already agreed that there would be somewhere along the line where we might answer the bonding letter?
And if the commissioners wish to do that, they can certainly do so. One is not dependent on the other.
Yeah, I don't care.
One other thing that I should also mention is that as part of this proposal on behalf of GKG, there is also a good faith deposit in the amount of $1,000 that was received as part of this agreement.
Did you say $1,000?
I said $1,000.
Right, there's a question by Commissioner Kiefer. Would the commissioners agree to his request?
I'm fine. If you want to make the motion to include
Yeah,
responding.
I'm all right with it. I'll
Yeah.
You know,
do them separate. That's fine.
Okay.
So let's have a motion to approve the promissory note agreement. Is that what you want first? And then
I thought yours was part of the
well, you can bind them or make them separate, whatever you'd want to do.
Kirk, what do we do here? Just tell us and we'll do it. Separate or?
Got agreements, so just decide how you want it done.
To be clear, I keep it separate and make two motions.
Okay.
I'll make
If you want to do your motion first.
I'll make the first motion that we agree to respond to the bonding agency, insurance agency's letter with appropriate facts.
Go ahead.
I second it.
All right, any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
5-0. Second motion would be approve the promissory note as presented.
Motion to approve it as presented.
Contract.
A substitution of contract.
Motion to approve substitution of contracts. That would,
Your second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Gentlemen, I don't hear anything. We cooperated with your motion.
No, I'm going to reluctantly agree, and because you're right. We agreed to get in order to get both parts. I will say $1,000 is a small amount compared to what's owed, and I will say I have concerns that we are legitimizing a transaction that was unauthorized, but
But not according to the administrator's bond result.
Well, according to information given to them, not according to every record that we have in county government.
Just for further discussion, we probably should have done this promissory note a year ago.
Well,
We may have already had full payment.
first of all, this was the first time that we have agreement from the parent company to back up this agreement, so that's a big deal.
Why do you have a problem with it all of a sudden? That's my question.
I've had a problem with it before, and
Why
I
do you have a
think I've
problem with
clarified
the
that.
promissory note right now? That's my question. That's all I need to know.
It legitimizes a transaction that I don't think went through the proper procedures in any way.
Didn't
I
the
think I have a
administrator's
concern.
bond deny
And I think I was very clear the whole way. I mean,
Didn't
I
we do
disagree
every
with that.
angle we could to try to recover that money? And a promissory note is
I'm not sure that we have. I'm not sure.
what would you have suggested? I'm just want to hear what would you have suggested?
You know, I think that we have talked about this issue for quite a while. I think more often than not, commissioners want this to go away rather than talk about it. And I just think it was something that deserved more conversation.
We've had over a year and a half of discussion, so it's not we didn't want to talk about it.
Well, just keep in mind,
A lot of it was
this agreement,
confidential closed session material.
First of all, we shouldn't even be here discussing this.
Yeah.
This was
So we have a motion.
activity that happened.
We have a
Contract was
consensus.
executed without commissioner approval. We shouldn't even be discussing this.
So we have
It never
four,
happened.
we have 4 votes. Terry, what is your vote?
Well, I said yes. Didn't you
Okay,
see my
that's-
head nod?
5-0. No, I wasn't sure.
Okay.
Okay, 5-0, all in favor, yeah, there we go, thank you. All right. Any other reports from staff? Mr. Slocum, did you want to continue?
Actually, yes, our crack staff, Vice President Baker has already sent a contact to the hygiene drive that you just mentioned. So we're already on top of that, and I'm sure we'll have some donations made. I'm glad to report that.
And also, if you know of any businesses, Randy, if your real estate firm wants to put out a care box, you're welcome to.
We can do it.
Yeah, I mean, that's what they're looking for, or court. They're looking for everybody to try to help.
And that is it, sir. Thank you.
Right. Any other county staff? If not, we'll proceed to citizens' participation. Anyone here for citizens' participation? Seeing no citizen coming forward, we'll begin with the Harbaugh Rural Legacy Program. Chris Boggs, you're up.
Good morning. All right, this is another rural legacy project. We're working hard to get through this FY19 grant and almost there. As you know, we've had the Rural Legacy Program in Washington County since 1998. Settled our first easement in 2000, so we're coming up on a 20-year anniversary next year from our first Rural Legacy easement. The Rural Legacy Program, of course, it's an agricultural easement program in which we purchase the development rights from the landowner, and they agree to keep the land in agricultural use for till the end of time, basically. So the Harbaugh project here is another one of those projects, 47.865 acres, and an easement value of $143,595. It's on the south side of Millbrook Road there in Keedysville. And it's a beef farm, 30 acres of cropland, 12 acres of pasture. It's got a little bit of woods on it, a little bit of stream buffering. But one of the cool things about it is it was part of the Union and Confederate approaches and retreats from the Battle of Antietam. So they went right through there. The Union 6th Corps specifically went right through that area on their approach. So it's right in the heart of the rural legacy area. It's contiguous to other easements. It just helps add to the block of easements that are existing there, and it's an ideal project for our rural legacy program. So FY19, we got a $2.3 million grant. We're almost the whole way through that this project, and maybe we can tack one smaller one on there to use it up the rest of the way. And we're just waiting for our FY20 grant this fall. Of course, the fiscal impact is these are 100% state dollars. And we get the 3% admin money and the 1.5% compliance as well, in addition to the easement value that go toward monitoring and administration, things of that nature. The Rural Legacy Board and the DNR approved this project and the program we have. Of course, if we don't accept the money, it goes to another county. Again, the fiscal impacts, it's, if anything, it's a benefit to the county.
Chris, what do you think, do we have any indication what'll be fiscal year 2020?
Not yet. I have, a lot of times they might give us a hint ahead of time, but I contacted DNR. I asked him about a week ago, and he still hadn't heard anything as of yet. I don't know if we're going to quite get the 2.3 million, although there are some other counties who did not meet some obligations, and when that occurs, the state will redistribute their allocation, and more often than not, we've received good chunks of the when that has happened. Our average over the past 20 years has been about $1 million a year. So I don't like to guess any higher than that.
How many people took advantage of the 2.3? It's about all gone.
Let's see.
Just to take a guess, 6, 7, 8?
It'll probably be 6 when it's all said and done. Now, it all depends on, the rural legacy easements go for around 3,000 an acre. So it really depends on the acreage of the farm. If you can do 10 small farms or 2 big ones. It really comes down to the acreage more than the number.
6 farmers in Washington County got a chunk of money just to buy their development rights, basically.
Correct.
Preserve land forever.
Absolutely. Yep. These are perpetual easements, so it preserves them forever.
Historic Antietam National Battle.
Yep. Absolutely. And and all of the the historic and environmental highly qualified areas around there.
I have a question
Sure.
for you, and I posed it to
Same
your
question as
predecessor.
always.
How many acres are we at now in preservation, and where are we at on our goal of 50,000?
Right now, we are at 34,141 acres of preserved land, and these are easements that have been settled. So with this, so we still have. Last Wednesday, we had 3 rural legacy properties that the commissioners had already approved. They were approved at the State Board of Public Works last week. We'll have this one as well to add to that. So we're humming along. And then, of course, this project will take us over the 7,100 acre mark for rural legacy alone. Of course, the recommended motion is to approve the Harbaugh Rural Legacy easement for $143,595 and approve the ordinance associated with it.
Commissioners, I have a recommended motion. Does anyone?
I just have a question.
Sure.
The families that receive this money for their development rights, they're also taxed on that money, correct?
Correct. It is considered, these easements are considered capital gain. So it depends on really what their basis is in the property. Mm-hmm. If they purchased it, they're probably not going to pay any taxes. But if it's inherited, that's when the taxes can be significant. It's helpful that the capital gains tax has been recently lowered, but of course, it still exists. So.
Thank you. Sorry.
Okay, no, that's okay. Any other questions? If not, I have a motion. Is there a motion on the floor? Is there a first, second?
Second.
First,
Fine, I made the first.
second. Any more discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you.
Thank you.
And I look for that 50,000 amount acre goal coming up one day. We're gonna have a little delay in our, Vicki Grimm has come into the, Vicki Grimm is in the room. We have certificate of appreciation to present. I'd like to present it to Vicki, then we'll all gather for photographs. Back on schedule, contract award, Oracle Fusion.
Good morning. So before you is contract award PUR 1424, Oracle Fusion Consultant Services Requirements Contract for the Information Systems Department. Recommended motion move to award a primary requirements contract for Oracle Fusion Consultant Services to be used by Budget and Finance, Human Resource, Information Technology Department to Metaformers Incorporated of Reston, Virginia, who submitted the lowest proposal in $39,600 based on their Pacific unit cost and the estimated hours, which are no guarantees, but maximum minimum number of hours will be performed. And as permitted in the RFP, to award a standby list of consultant contract to Cherry Road Technologies Incorporated of Morris Plain, New Jersey, at their Pacific unit cost, which does not guarantee any minimum or maximum number of hours to be performed. Some of the work entailed will be for functional and technical staffing planning, prioritization, implementation, payroll, time labor management as needed on a time basis and technical basis. It's a it's a 2-year contract with 1 3-year options to renew. The work will be utilized on a as-needed basis. Basically, the contract will work that the projects that are deemed to be less than $50,000 will go to the awarded vendor, which will be Metaformer, and projects that are deemed to be $50,000 or more will be distributed amongst both consultants to get a price for the work to be performed. The RFP was advertised on the various websites that's listed in the ARF. You can see the number of individuals who downloaded the document, who was present at the pre-proposal, the number of proposals that were received, the coordinated committee, which was comprised of all the members, and also the fiscal impact, which shows a budget of $103,000. And we have a concurrence of an award to Metaformers from the coordinating committee.
Any questions from the commissioners? Is there support with the motion?
I'll make a motion to approve as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
I have a first and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, call for a vote of approval. All in favor, say aye.
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 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Fire service performance testing, I believe, isn't it? Or, whoops, excuse me, school base, I skipped ahead, pardon me. That got a grin out of you, thank you. School-based mental health services, Rick Curry and staff, thank you very much.
All right. This subject is contract award PUR 1430, school-based mental health services. The recommended motion is to award provision of the contract to school-based mental health services to the responsible proposer, Brook Lane Health Service Incorporated of Hagerstown, Maryland, an amount of $211,560 for option A and $120,000 for option B, contingent upon their funding provided by the governor's office, and also approval of the county's fiscal 20 budget and approval of the local management board. Basically, the purpose of the service is to fulfill the governor's partnership with community to provide services to youth within schools, to provide referral services. And the contract is to begin August the 1st and end June 30th, 2020, with an option by Office of Grant Management to reward the contract for 1 consecutive year through 2021 if funding is provided. Also in the ARF, you can see the members who served on the coordinated committee, the number of times the document was downloaded on the website. We only received 1 proposal for this project, and also the fiscal impact of the project and concurrences of the coordinated committee with the recommendation of the award to Brook Lane Health Service Incorporated of Hagerstown, Maryland.
Discussion, commissioners, questions?
I just have a general question, if I can. It's not necessarily pertaining to this service at all, but in general, when we receive these grant opportunities, it's always upon approval. How do we know if and when those grants are approved? Is that something that we can be made aware of if they're not approved? Something that, a grant that we approve to apply for and it's not received?
I think that's doable.
That's
We could come
doable,
in staff comments if something was not approved as presented.
Do we typically have a fairly high success rate for all the grants we
Normally
apply
have
for?
a high success rate, yes.
Okay. Just curious. Thanks.
Any other questions?
So we have 120,000 we have to put toward that budgeted already? Is that what I'm reading, or is,
It is.
yeah, so that's in our budget? That was just for this past year. It didn't happen, but has that always been in the budget, or is this new
Yeah,
this year?
it's always been in the budget.
Okay.
Hearing no more comments, is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Any other
Just
questions?
just a quick question, make sure I understand. So the option A is what we're getting from the office of the governor's office, and option B is an additional 4 schools that we've consistently budgeted for. Is that what we're doing?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted
First
to
and a second, call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 5-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll proceed with fire service performance testing.
Good morning, Brandy Noggle, Buyer in the Purchasing Office.
Good morning, John Hart, Division of Emergency Services.
The recommendation before you today is for the contract award PUR 1431 Fire Service Performance Testing and Inspection. The recommended motion is to award the contract for fire service performance testing and inspection of fire hoses, fire pumps, and ladders to the responsible bidders, Fire One Incorporated of Drexel Hill, Pennsylvania, under option 2, Group A, for the total sum price of $15,125, and Group B for the total sum of $43,100, and to award to Waterways of Southwest Pennsylvania out of Bethel Park, Pennsylvania, for option 2, Group C, for the total sum of $5,724. On June 3rd, the county advertised the invitation of bid in the local newspaper, email and marketplace website, and the county's website. The contract is for a 1-year period with the option for the county to pick up 2 consecutive 1-year renewals. The bid was advertised and downloaded by 4 companies, and we received 2 bids back. The bidder's responsibility in this contract is the testing and inspection of over 55 pumps within 16 companies, hose testing within 15 companies, and over 200 ground, straight, and extension ladders. Funds are budgeted in this department's appropriate budget, and again, we're asking for approval as recommended.
Commissioners, questions?
make the motion to approve as recommended.
I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
First and a second. Is there any further discussion? If not, I have a motion to support. Everyone say aye.
Aye.
I vote. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
11 o'clock. Welcome back, everyone. On our agenda now is a public hearing, application for zoning text amendment, RZ-19-003, mineral extraction operations. The purpose of this hearing is to hear public testimony concerning the matter. The procedure is as follows. We will have staff introduce the matter, after which the hearing will be open for public comment and testimony. Each speaker will be given a maximum of 3 minutes to testify. After everyone who wishes to speak has done so, the hearing will close. The commissioners may then discuss the issue and take any action they deem appropriate, including adoption or rejection of the proposal, or they may take the issue under advisement and deliberate at a later date. You may now introduce the matter, sir.
Good morning, everyone. Travis Allen, I'm a comprehensive planner with the Department of Planning and Zoning here at the county. This text amendment, RZ 19-002, concerns the treatment of mineral extraction in the county. The purpose of this amendment is to amend text in several sections of the zoning ordinance that do regulate this type of land use. This is language that was unintentionally omitted in prior text amendments, particularly after the 2005 rural area rezoning. And the purpose would be to correct those omissions and bring treatment of mineral extraction in line with state regulations as they currently stand. And just to be clear about what we're proposing here, really these are just cleanup amendments and they don't constitute an expansion of this type of land use beyond what is already permitted throughout the county. So just to provide a little bit of background, prior to the 2005 rural area rezoning, there were 3 different classifications for mineral extraction. These included low, moderate, and high volume mineral extraction operations. Low volume operations were defined as operations that disturbed a land area less than 1 acre. Moderate volume operations were those that fell between 1 and 5 acres and included mineral processing facilities. And high volume mineral extraction operations would be those greater than 5 acres. And those would be the only type of operations that would need the application of the industrial mineral overlay. So looking at the individual articles that we're looking to amend here, the first would be Article 3. 3.3 is the table of land uses for the rural area in the zoning ordinance. As it currently stands, it just has a single definition for mining, which reads mineral extraction, mineral processing, mineral-related uses, and mineral-based manufacturing. And that doesn't allow mining really anywhere except for in the IM district. We propose to delete that current definition and add those 3 different classification levels that I kind of just described briefly before. Low volume would be allowed in all the rural districts except for the rural village and industrial mineral district, which is again reserved for high volume operations. The moderate volume operations would be a principal permitted use in areas that had the rural business overlay applied to them, and they would be a special exception in the ag-rural environmental conservation and preservation districts. The high volume operations would still only be allowed with the application of that IM district. All of these classifications would be subject to the Article 412 performance standards in the zoning ordinance that regulate, vibration, dust, noise, all that kind of thing. The moderate and high volume operations would also bring in site planning and grading plan requirements from Article 15 in the zoning ordinance. The definitions that you see that we propose there also do include a reference to Article 25.6 in the zoning ordinance, and those are just the considerations that the Board of Appeals looks at and whether to grant a special exception. Next article we'd be looking to amend is the Article 414 General Provisions. This is one of the areas where the language did actually carry over after 2005. The 3 different classifications are present there as the zoning ordinance currently stands, but we would change their definitions to reflect what we're proposing here. Within the urban zoning districts, which would include Articles 11 through 14 and 21A through C, low-volume mineral extraction operations would be a principal permitted use in the BL, BG, IR, IG, ORT, ORI, and ERT. And again, those uses are already permitted within those areas now. Again, just to be clear, this would just be inserting that language into those individual districts to clear up kind of some confusion about whether that is or is not allowed in those districts. Moderate volume operations are already permitted as a special exception in the industrial general district. Again, this is another place where some language did carry over. So we would just replace the definition of that operation in the IG district with what we're proposing. So to, again, kind of wrap up here after this brief introduction, again, these changes aren't really a proposal to expand this type of land use. Part of the reason that we're asking for this is that the Maryland Annotated Code does exempt mining operations that are less than 1 acre. So this would help provide clarity for both local permitting as well as state regulation of this type of land use. For example, in cases where fill material might be transferred between sites, the property owners wouldn't have to worry about that being considered a mining operation by the state, and they'd be able to go about their business a little easier. It would also allow, these amendments would also allow low-volume operators to gain a financial benefit from their land without necessarily worrying about needing that industrial mineral application to their property. So the Planning Commission did approve these proposed amendments unanimously at their April 1st meeting. So far, I don't believe that we've had any official public comments on the matter, but you know, unofficially, people who have been sort of dealing with that, especially low volume operations hurdle, have spoken sort of informally about the, you know, the utility of having this, these changes being made. So we would ask for a motion to approve these amendments after the public and whoever else has a chance to ask questions.
Does that conclude your report?
Yes.
Okay. We will now open the hearing for public comment. Anyone wishing to testify, please come forward. Seeing no public coming forward, do the commissioners have any questions? Please start.
I just have a couple simple questions. I see when we talk about low volume mining extraction, mineral extraction, we're talking about 1 acre or less. What might be an example that would be used when 1 acre of property? Can you think of something existing in the county, or maybe a request that's come forward?
I mean, the situations that's been brought up is, you know, a person who is looking to, you know, take a shovel full of dirt out every once in a while and potentially sell that offsite as fill material for somebody else. So we're not talking about, you know, a full-scale mine where they're getting into a deep pit mine, but more of a surface operation that, you know, you might have to get into sediment and erosion control things if they start expanding beyond 5,000 square feet, but, you know, it's sort of just a scoop of, you know, material here and there that doesn't really constitute a full-scale mining operation.
Okay. That makes sense. Yeah, one follow-up question to that. I think with some of the technology that exists now, like when land is fracked, for example, I think the piping that goes down into the ground can go out in all different directions, and maybe on the surface you might have less than an acre disturbed, but underground, you know, who knows how far out in either direction you can go. What would that category fall into, where on the surface it's less than an acre, but underground, the area that's, you know, moved?
It's a good question. I mean, I think if somebody was really applying to engage in a true mining operation like that, we would have them go through the full industrial mineral overlay application, and they would probably be involved with state regulation as well too. You know, in a situation where you know, somebody could potentially disturb less than that, it might fall into sort of a gray area, but my understanding is most of those are fairly intensive operations that, you know, because part of the, again, once you get up to at least a moderate volume operation, it includes not only the land area disturbed, but also the mineral processing facilities that are involved too. So that additional measure might actually, you cover more than an acre, even if they are somehow able to limit the actual scale of disturbance of the actual mining operation. So it potentially could be something we'd have to look at, but I think if they were truly going to, hydraulically frack or do an operation of that measure, the county would probably just have them go ahead and get an IM overlay.
Okay.
Mr. Allen, and I do read that each one of these provisions has for the revegetation of the property with county approval. So we reclaim that land back to the original site or better, our approval of the plan. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I did ask that question amongst some of the staff members as to what that would be like exactly in the aftermath of that. So it would be similar measures as we do to sediment and erosion control, so fencing, regrading, stabilization in terms of some grass or whatever it might be to control the amount of runoff. But yeah, that would be a part of it.
Thank you. Commissioners, any other questions? Okay, hearing no other questions, the public hearing is now concluded. Commissioners, thoughts, comments? Would you like to vote on it today or wait? I'd entertain a motion to approve his motion, not emotion.
I'm all right. I'll make the motion to approve the changes.
Is that submitted? Is there a second?
Second.
Yeah, so just to clarify, the motion would be to amend the zoning ordinance as presented with an effective date. The ordinance provides that changes to the ordinance cannot take effect until 10 days after a public hearing, so I would recommend that you make an effective date 2 weeks out.
Make it effective as of
Or August 15th.
August 13th. August 13th is.
The date, August 13th. We have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
I'll re-second.
A second. Any other questions, comments? If not, a motion to approve. I'll say aye. Aye.
Aye.
5-0. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Allen. Next up, solar facilities, estoppel certificates, and lease.
I thought I was up.
Good morning. Andy Rashelman, Director of Public Works. I'm here this morning to discuss the county solar facilities, as well as to seek a motion for the execution of estoppel certificates and lease amendments in connection with the existing solar facility site leases and power purchase agreements for the facilities identified as the Creek, Resch S1, Rubble 1, and Rubble 2 solar facilities on county property. The county has 4 solar facility site lease agreements and 4 corresponding power purchase agreements with Spearpoint Energy LLC for the above identified facilities. They have designated an LLC for each of those sites, but I'll refer to them as Spearpoint Energy when talking about this. Spearpoint has notified the county that it is selling and transferring its interest in the solar facilities. Spearpoint has requested that the county execute estoppel certificates and lease amendments to facilitate the sale and transfer of their interest under the agreements to their successor, which is a company called Clara Cressingham LLC. Up to this point, Spearpoint is compliant with the terms and conditions of its agreements with the county, and they requested the county's execution of the estoppel certificates and the lease amendments in accordance with the provisions of the agreements to sell and transfer its rights for the 4 solar facilities, as well as adjust the boundary drawings for the lease premise to represent what the actual as-built conditions are. The transfer will not affect the terms and conditions of the original agreements, which will bind Spearpoint's successor, Claire Cressingham, in interest in the future. So that's kind of the procedural matter here today, is the execution of those documents. We've been working with our county attorney staff for those for a number of months since we've been notified. So I'm happy to answer questions to the best of my ability on those, or defer the legal questions to Kendall and Kurt as well. If there's any questions about how the operation of the county solar facilities function or work, or any of the financials, I can get into that as well. But the general purpose for today here is the execution of those estoppel certificates, which is our obligation to carry forward and execute under our current agreement.
Commissioners, any discussion?
Just Kirk, that seems in line. Everything seems, you
Yeah, I
want
mean,
to,
this is basically a housekeeping matter to facilitate the transaction. It's not altering the terms and conditions of the existing agreements. Basically, an estoppel certificate is something that a new purchaser, or in particular a lender, backing the transaction, basically wants to know that we're not going to claim that they're in breach, so they have some assurance going forward that everything is in order. And the lease amendments are merely technical amendments to match the as-built surveyed property lines.
Any other questions?
And according to the letter, the fence line we don't have anything to worry about with the fence line being outside of the leased property.
Well, that's one of the things that's being modified. There's a survey affidavit, and so one of the amendments is to revise the lease area to reflect the as-built conditions. I think in many cases, the actual as-built areas were less than what was in the original lease and the site plan. I think in one case, it might be a fraction over, but essentially it is an as-built survey for what's out there today.
Okay.
I think another point that is important to make is that these companies have acquired the services of Frederick Seibert to go out and do surveying work to confirm the as-built conditions on the ground.
that is important.
Any other questions? There's a recommended motion to approve. Do I hear one?
Motion to approve.
I have a first. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a first and a second. Any further questions? If not, I'll say vote A to approve. A.
A.
I'm trying to switch it around. A, 5-0, thank you. A,
Okay.
aye.
Any other questions about the solar facilities? While we're on, it seems to be a popular topic.
All right,
We
thank
good?
you for,
Don't open that door.
Okay.
we'll have you on next week. You're that anxious.
Okay.
Thank you very much. All right, Sarah Graves, you're up. Sarah, welcome.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm here in front of you today to ask for approval of a budget adjustment. Throughout the budget discussions that we've had for fiscal year 2020, there was discussion related to the amount of money that we generally pay into our OPEB, which is $1,221,000 to be made to the pension fund instead. So really, I'm here today just for formal approval. Within the budget, the OPEB budget does have the funds ready and waiting to be spent. However, I'd like to transfer those funds for transparency to the pension account. So I'd like approval today to move forward to make that payment. And the accompanying budget adjustment is here.
Sarah, do you have handy, and if not, that's okay, we can get it later. Do you have handy what percentage funded we are now, and then after this budget transfer, what that percentage will be?
I don't. I know that the most recent report that I have, the percent funded was for pension was around 58%. You know, it may not change drastically with just this one payment because there are a lot of algorithms and assumptions related to the funded status, but I can check into that and see if this would make a significant change. I can tell you that, any additional appropriation will be beneficial to the funded status of the pension funds.
And the OPEB's 100%.
It is over
102.
100%, yes. So the OPEB fund is in very good shape.
I'll make the motion if it's all right, and approve the budget adjustment to use the OPEB funds budgeted in 2020 for additional pension contributions.
First, is there a second?
Second.
First and a second, any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
5-0, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. David Hayes, you're up, sir.
Good morning again.
Sure. Good morning, Commissioners. Dave Hayes, Director of Division of Emergency Services, Sarah Greaves, Chief Financial Officer, here to present to you some information related to the accounting and audit of funds of independent companies. And this is just kind of a summary for discussion purposes. So for accounting, which is what we have just contracted with an outside firm, Smith Elliott Kearns and Company, to provide for us, is to review, account, and report on distributions made to fire and EMS companies in accordance with county and state policies on a reimbursement basis. Reimbursements will be made on a quarterly basis for expenditures incurred within that quarter. This method will provide a detailed accounting for distribution to these companies, and the current practice, we have contracted with Smith Elliott Kearns for approximately $82,000 for this service. Different than that accounting and review service that we have is we have ongoing the Smithsburg scope with Smith Elliott and Kearns. So as we are all aware, Smithsburg had come to the county for some financial help, and through that process they contracted separately on their own with Smith Elliott Kearns and Company to do the following: prepare financial statements for their fiscal year 2019, prepare their Form 990, and for general bookkeeping services. So Smith Elliott Kearns is contracted to perform a compilation for them. It's taking their information, it's putting it into financial statements. They did not contract with Smithsburg EMS to verify the accuracy or completeness of their information. They did not contract with them to do an audit. So they were contracted for that above work for the financial statement preparation and the 990 for $6,000. Separate from that, we have prepared or helped to prepare a scope of work for an audit for Smithsburg EMS. This audit will include examining on a test basis evidence supporting the amounts and disclosures in their statements. So this audit will include obtaining an understanding of the organization, its environment, some internal controls, risks, and anything related to financial statement disclosure. In addition to that, the audit will also evaluate their compliance with labor regulations related to payroll of emergency services workers, including the compensation of overtime. And it will also include a review of their 401k contributions. So, and that estimated cost is currently around between $10,000 and $15,000. They have not contracted with a firm at this time. We believe that there was not a lot of interest because the scope was too defined. So we've modified that to try to get some more interest so that we can get that, we can help them to try to get some response for that
So
type of audit.
the audit with Smithburg so far, correct me, I think I'm reading this right, it was 6,000, but to take it the next step, it's 15,000. Is that what you're saying?
That's not really what I'm saying. So what they've contracted with so far for 6,000 is just a preparation of their financial statements and of the Form 990, which is a state form. So that's actually not an audit at all. Basically, what the company will do, Smith Elliott Kearns and Company, they'll take the information that's included in their accounting software, and they will use that information to prepare the statements.
Well, the information we already received on Smithsburg,
Mhm.
that cost us 6,000. That's what is that good
It
statement?
costs Smithsburg EMS 6,000.
So we found out a lot for 6,000.
For
Would
some
you
of
agree or
those
disagree?
findings. I think that there were things that definitely have come to light. However, what I wanted to make sure that the commissioners were aware of is that Smith Elliott Kearns and Company did not contract with them to probe into their financials. That information came out throughout the
So
process.
to probe into the financials, let's say this, we got a lot of information for $6,000. What do you get for 10 grand? What do you get for 12 grand? What do you get for 50? What's the difference in the audits?
Well, the audit is, the auditors will go in and they will actually look at transactions within the company, and they will verify, the completeness and accuracy of that. So if I'm saying that I spent $10,000 on utilities, they're going to look at that. They're going to test that to see, did I record my expenditures appropriately?
Yeah, but wouldn't that, if you spend 15,000, would that get you everything? I mean, you got a 401k contribution audit, so that's another 15,000. Is that
No,
what?
that's included in the scope of work. So we think that that could be included with the audit.
How far, because reading this, it says 2019, so how far back does this 15,000 go? Is it a 2018 audit or just
That's
2019?
That's a 1 year, yeah,
Okay.
for 1 year. And that's the reason we felt like there weren't many responses to the scope of work, because it did originally include more years than one.
There's a clarification. I think you used too detailed of a scope,
Yeah.
and I would say it was too broad of a scope.
Okay,
Meaning 3 years,
okay,
where
I think it
it
actually
went
was
back
4
3 years.
Sure.
We went back through 2016. It would include the current fiscal year is complete. So we
And that's
were
where they had one response, correct?
right.
Thank you for that clarification, Rob.
And we've asked the board president to take the new scope of work that's defined as a smaller time period and go back out to the companies and see if any of them would be interested in submitting a proposal now, so that we at least have some marketing comparison about what they're paying for.
And I mean, instead of, I would make the suggestion that with the review, the 401k contributions, that we're also reviewing the 5,500 filing. I mean, that needs to be in there, because that's a federal form that needs to be filled out, and we want to make sure that they've been done correctly.
Okay.
So if I could ask a question, the services that were performed for $6,000, it looks like that's their 990 form, their financial statement, some general bookkeeping services. Is that not an expense that every company also incurs? Is that their
Many
normal
probably
routine
do.
accounting services?
Some of them may prepare their own statements. They may prepare their own 990. I do not know if they all contract out, but I think definitely some of them contract out for that work. Yes.
I can speak for again, where my past is Community Rescue Service. They contracted those services out.
Commissioners, any more questions at the moment?
So for the 82.4, we're getting reviews of what? How many companies, what?
For the 82,000, we have all companies now turning in invoices and any documentation required to actually receive a reimbursement. So before we weren't doing this. So now we can be assured that county funds are paying for appropriate expenditures that are within the documents that the county has.
Being reimbursed at a quicker rate.
Yes. Yes.
And I think just to make sure that we know what funding we're speaking of, it's the general allocation that's to each company of $48,000, the firefighter staffing subsidy that they're eligible for of $25,000, the fuel maintenance and utility programs that are reimbursed, and then the EMS staffing subsidy that goes out to the 8 independent EMS corporations. And they were already required to report in the exact same fashion that we're doing now for Senator Amos money. But that is actually being taken out of our office and put into this program, so it's all encapsulating, meaning this third-party review.
Yeah, I guess I got a concern now. Seems like what we're seeing, is this enough? Is the review enough? I mean, I brought this up before. I want to know if it's enough. Is it enough to really get into the meat of things, and is it a Band-Aid? Is it just let's kiss it and then just hold it off here for a minute and then see how it works out in the next 3 years? You know, you can't. We're trying to build a solid. We raise taxes to build a solid foundation for fire and rescue. We raise taxes to do that. That's what my intention was. If we don't have a strong foundation, if we just Band-Aid this thing, are we really going to build a strong foundation? Or are we building on sand? That's what bothers me about all this.
Sure.
We're spending $100 grand. We're working with Smithburg, maybe other people, who knows? And you know, we're not building a foundation. I don't think. I think you got to get them all on a strong. I don't say all of them. Maybe there's only 4 or 5. I don't know. Maybe there's 2. Who knows?
Well, and I think for senior staff here sitting anyway, to speak to that is we don't know what we don't know. So it's much like when we went back through the review and accounting principles. There were some companies that probably had all their documentation submitted, but without reviewing them all, we didn't know which companies did or which companies did not. So we asked them all to resubmit everything. And again, the goal was, and it's similar to what you're speaking to, Commissioner, is to make sure that we know that they're getting the money they're entitled to, but on the backside of that as well, that also we're not paying money that we shouldn't be paying. So
I understand
there's
completely,
two sides
but
of
if
that
there's
spreadsheet.
bad practices out there, you know, I'd sort of like to know about it and fix them. Yeah. I mean, we've heard how many times from people that aren't experienced handling all the money. It's not their fault. They're the only people there to do it. You know, I don't have any business doing that for a fire and rescue. Maybe court does, but I don't. But it doesn't mean there's anything malicious going on. It's just poor bookkeeping and poor expenditures and not knowing how much money you have and forecasting it's basic budgeting. You know, I'm worried that's not happening. Yeah. So I don't know how we figure that out.
We have the association, some of the leadership here. So I mean, I don't know if they have anything to add to that conversation, but if the commissioners are welcoming, I certainly would ask them to join in or add comment.
I mean, maybe the rest of the commissioners don't agree with what I'm saying. I'll chime in, somebody.
I think what you're saying is right. I think we're going to find a lot out by this audit of Smithsburg, and instead of just the review, the full audit that's going to be happening. I personally would like to see more than 2019, maybe not 5 years or whatever it was. If it's just 2018 and 19 with this, I think that's going to be a good step. And I do have concerns. I mean, we have $1 million budgeted for implementation of somehow with the EMS, the 8 EMS units coming up for next year.
Right.
And that does concern me if we're going to be giving $1 million more, an audit of all of them to get them how you said on a,
good foundation.
Foundation could make sense. And maybe we use a portion of that money, that $1 million to get the audit done for all of the 8 EMS stations.
Because that's something definitely that's important to bring into the discussion, that there will be a cost to any additional audits. I will say, the audit is really looking back at, what has happened in the past. The process and procedure that we have moving forward with the accountability will serve us well in the future. And so I think that that's really important too. As we move forward, we understand, hey, county funds are being looked at with a closer eye. We are receiving the invoices here at the county or with the firm that we've contracted with to measure the use of the funds. So,
and one of the reasons, I'm sorry, Dave,
Go ahead,
but
Rob.
one of the reasons we looked a year, because we had looked at 3, was 15,000 alone times 26 companies was 390,000. So that's about 400,000. So the spot check, looking back a year alone, was a compromise, a balance that we looked at. Certainly can go back 2 years, probably cost a little bit more. We are trying to land.
A lot of money there, Mr. Slagle.
I actually narrowed it back from 3 years to 1 year to try to save money, Vice President Baker.
So will 2 years cost twice as much?
Yes,
it will,
probably.
it's the same amount of work, it's double, right?
That's correct.
So you may take that 15 to
30.
25 or 30.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's why we used a shorter time frame. So landing what I think all commissioners are interested in is seeing that the bottom line is that fire and emergency medical services are provided with this additional funding that's coming out. So between these audits, which were some additional information that was requested 2 weeks ago, these are the 3 tiers that staff is bringing for you. There's also coming up in the near future, this month of August, Dave will be back with some scenarios on the staffing of EMS. We hope to know in August about the staffing of the SAFER grant. So this information is evolving. Staff is doing a great deal of work behind the scenes presenting this to you. There is some decision to be made as far as if you want to hold with the accounting for now, which, as Sarah put it very well, accounting is moving forward on a reimbursement basis. Audit is looking at the past for what has happened.
I think the accounting is something that we definitely have to do, because to stop anything, get it done, get it corrected, we haven't looked back, but let's get it fixed now. My thought was not to do all of the stations, but if we started with just the 8 EMS stations, since that's what the $1 million extra is for, we start with auditing them, not all 29. That would be my thought. So we can get a look at that, and at 15, that's about 120. It's a big bite. We have $1 million. If we have to delay it a month to make sure that all the money's been spent properly, that's something I would be interested in.
And I think if you take you back to your emergency services fiscal policy, the ability to enact an audit, whether it's random or not, sits in that policy that was adopted back in 2013. So I don't think it's outside of your purview for receiving county dollars, if that's the choice of the commissioners.
Yeah, we sure did discover a lot of mistakes with a company. How do I don't want to give somebody $1 million or there's that many mistakes in some other company. I want to make sure that the mistakes aren't going to happen again.
Sure, fair enough.
And I'm with Court on that. I mean, I want to be able to look and see what they've done and what their bookkeeping practices are before I give $1 million. Yeah, I mean,
$1 million is a lot of money.
And I think there's going to be things that come out on a very positive note. We heard earlier today that a company did not know about a reimbursement that they were eligible for, and that will be a very positive thing, that they find out about stuff that they did not know they were eligible for. So I think it's going to go both ways, and if we can go through it, to me that makes sense.
Okay.
I'll just jump in a little bit here. I'm in agreement that I think, as thorough of an audit that we can do as possible and financially feasible is important. I understand it's quite costly to go back more than 1 year. Maybe as we go along, if something egregious is found, then that might be a cost to go back more years just on one particular company and not across the board. I think it's also important as we do these audits that we look at the full scope of the company. I said before, and I think Commissioner Wagner has as well, and others, that don't just look at monies provided by the county when we look at the audit. We have to look at the whole picture. If someone works 2 jobs and they're audited by the IRS isn't going to be concerned about just one paycheck. They're going to be concerned about both paychecks, or both sources of income, and was taxes paid properly. So obviously we're not looking at taxes here, but just as an analogy, if we could. And I still think going forward, it looks like we're going to be having some accounting requests as we go forward well into the future that I think is important as well. I still want to question, when we look at the cost of what this is, might it be more efficient to have someone internally do that? I think is something that maybe we could look at and revisit. And I understand having someone on the outside provides an independent mindset, but maybe working in Sarah's department under the CFO and not under Dave Hayes, no disrespect there, but if that separates that issue that we might have, where that's independent enough, if it comes from our finance office and not emergency services, might be a good idea. And that way it's one eye, one mind, one accounting person looking at everything, and not a mix of accountants, whoever might be available at an accounting firm for that given day to go to that company. So you truly do have just one person looking at it. Obviously more than that when they're done, but one person can easily compare what they've previously audited and looked through with other companies. So I do wonder if we might find a more economic way to do that in-house rather than externally.
I think Mr. Hayes, you commented on that the last time, that it puts a lot of pressure and hiring extra staff for her. I would support an independent audit, and yes, it's going to be expensive, but the cost of it, but how expensive is the ineffective use of tax dollars too? I mean, to assure on the timeline of Washington County, with this group of commissioners, finally, whether we all agree on all the items, we are in agreement that we are going to fix fire and EMS. And I think by beginning with an independent audit, separate of the county, we may find ways that money will be saved and practices improved that will offset that cost, and at the same time, assure our taxpayers that we're doing the best for them to get the best for the dollar that they provide, and to complement our EMS, our people, that we're doing as best as we can for them to improve the system.
And I think one of the comments that I had spoken to, which, Mr. President Klein, you're correct. My thought was that, where we're going now, I believe, does represent the initial first approach to this. And once we get this implemented and we get the policies and any of the kinks or bugs worked out of it, then there may be opportunity in a year or 2 years or whatever to better exercise some efficiencies and bring some of these processes, if not the whole thing, internally. But I believe in the beginning this is going to be a significant task to undertake, and I'm hopeful that we're out in an outside independent capacity that does provide some independent review, that where the departments understand it's not the county trying to come in here and saying you're doing 200 things wrong. We're trying to help you do 200 things right, and sometimes bringing that outside person in gives that unbiased or kind of unfiltered approach to that. And so that's where I would be on that, but certainly defer to the commissioners and/or other senior county leadership in any direction we take.
Any other questions for anyone?
Are we gonna, I guess, get another proposal for what the audits would cost if we did it,
If we group them together, maybe we would get a better pricing structure. And I assume that's to include Smithsburg. So whereas Smithsburg was held separate, they'd be included in the 8.
to see if it's possible.
If that's what the
and
commissioners would.
If not, if it's 1 year or 2 years, what they might be interested in. Because you said the 4-year, they had only one person came back. So
Yeah, and so now too, the dynamic will kind of change a little bit, because before, where it was just Smithsburg, they were kind of contracting by themselves. If the county's going to take ownership of this, we'll probably have to write an RFP.
And I would
It'll
advocate
take some time.
that if we're going to do the audits, and let's just move away from Smithsburg contracting an independent audit and bring it into a county process, and then we can move it forward in whatever direction, senior leadership and the commissioners would like us to.
Right.
I think that's the best path for.
So if that's the direction of the board, just let us know and we can
That's
start.
my thoughts. So if there's a consensus,
Yeah, it's basically you've asked for a price on audited and the 9 EMS companies, correct? Is that what you just asked?
It would be 8.
8 EMS
Eight,
companies.
yeah, 8,
Staff will
So-
have to begin writing the RFP for that.
Yeah, I'd like to see that.
Okay.
I'm in favor. What kind of a timeline are you looking at to get the RFP out? to get
Right
bids
now,
back
we
in?
have a lot going on upstairs with the submission of the invoices from July 1/17 through June 30/19. So
priority, yeah.
it is, because we want to get those turned around. We need to review those, get those turned around. 60 days.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't spend $1 million to win.
this fiscal year.
You decide.
Okay, so I just want to see something, I just want,
hey,
I want responsibility.
consensus to move forward with that. And
You'll bring all of the cost back